Good afternoon. I'd like to call today's committee of the whole meeting to order. The Town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walked this land since time immemorial. Today we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. And with that, we will call the meeting to order. First order of business is adoption of the agenda. Council, are there any changes? Seeing no changes from council. Administration, are there any changes?
No changes from administration.
Thank you. With that, I'd accept a motion to approve the agenda. Councilor Magoon.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, we will call the question to adopt the agenda as presented. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. That brings us to citizens' minute with council. Are there any citizens registered to present to council today?
No, there's no one.
Okay, seeing no citizens presenting to council, minute with council today. Move into our first delegation and presentation. RCMP Annual Performance Plan Results 2024-2025, presented by Cheryl Bidey.
Thank you. I believe everybody should have a copy. I think everybody knows who I am. So I'm the detachment commander in Hinton, and I've presented to you the 2024-2025. And just to recap, so our 2024 does go from April 2024 to April 2025. So our last quarter is where I'll have the latest update because we're not quite done our year. So this presentation will be the policing priorities that we went through 2024, current crime stats in Hinton, and future policing priorities for 2025, as well as a little recap in regards to our body-worn cameras. So an overview of last year. So our goal was to decrease collisions, decrease theft in the town of Hinton, as well as maintain a positive community relation. All those are done through different initiatives that we've done over the year. So first would be decrease injury collisions. So that's through increasing enforcement. So our goal was to write 1,000 tickets, and we are currently at 488 as of December 31st. Increased joint force operations, that means working alongside Fish and Wildlife, CN, as well as Hinton Community Peace Officers. Our goal was 12, and our total so far is 10. As well as continuing a traffic working group, and that's where we identify problems within the town of Hinton and make changes to improve, such as the four-way stop on Mountain Street, where we had the stop signs changed. So when we get complaints, that's where we document it. So our goal was to have 4 meetings a year. As of December 31st, we were at 3. So usually we do them quarterly. So in conclusion, looked up a few of the stats in regards to injury collisions, which was our goal. So we had 35 for the year of 2024, 34 for the year of 2023, and 27 the previous year in 2022. Moving on to property theft. So our goal was to reduce specifically property crime. So condition checks would be if somebody's released from court or from police custody, that we check on their conditions, such as curfew. So our goal was 150 checks, and total as of December 31st, we're at 103. Search warrants, where our goal is to write 30 search warrants in the last year, and our total is 43 as of December 31st. Intelligence gathering through debriefs is done through confidential informants, where we get information and we use them in our warrants. Our goal was 50 debriefs, and we totaled 56. And last category, which was a new category, our street checks. We were looking for 100 street checks, and our total was 76 as of December 31st. Some context as to what a street check is. It's a file that's created based on an example would be if we get lots of break-in enters into an area and we see 2 people walking in that area, we stop and talk to them, and then we make a file based on that interaction as we identify and speak to them. So in conclusion, So our goal was to decrease property crime. In 2024, we had 82 calls. 2023, we had 52, and 2022, 48. So it's an increase of 38%. We can speak a little bit more in regards to 38% increase. This was driven a lot by our general investigation section. So I'll explain that a little bit more further in the presentation. Next will be maintaining positive relations within the town of Hinton. So we do that through education sessions such as our media. Each month we release a media speaking about the overview of the last month. So our goal was 12, we're a total of 9 as of December 31st. Coffee with a Cop is done either with the gentleman at A&W or Pine Valley, so our goal is 4. And currently we were at 3 as of December 31st. Positive Ticket Program, this is a new program that we created this year. Our goal was 365 tickets. Our goal is 61 as of December 31st. And to increase patrols other than in a PC or a police car, our goal was 50 and our total as of December 31st was 55. So in conclusion, proactive policing is very difficult to measure and its impact on the community as well as its impact on the crime rate. An example would be hotspot patrol being done other than in a police car. We don't know how much that's decreased the crime and unable to measure that amount. The next slide is the profiles by year for the municipality. So in 2023, we had 4,300 calls for service. In 2024, we were down to 35. There, out of the 3,500 calls, 1,500 were front counter as well as proactive files that were created in 2024, which amounts to 45% of the calls generated in town. And that goes back to the proactivity of my members. And 1,900 were calls for service through our operations center. There was a decrease of 18% in 2024 compared to 2023. And that does not include the provincial traffic units that work within our town. Just going back to proactive files that have been created, GIS has been very active in conducting a number of drug investigations, which has resulted in a period of incarceration of the clients. This putting the effort into the drug investigations, seizing large amounts of drugs and money, and removing the harmful drugs from the street. It has a direct impact on the amount of crime that we're seeing at this time. Files per month, so I just thought this was a bit good information. So in July, most generated files were during that month. In the previous year, it was in June, while December had the least amount of calls for service. Top 10 files. So file count versus workload is different because we monitor the amount of files that come in versus the amount of time that it takes to solve a file. So top 10 file count would be mischief, well-being checks, as well as non-moving traffic violations. The next slide, you'll see our workload is through mischief calls, disturbing the peace, as well as mental health act. The mental health act, we normally have to drive clients to Edmonton, which it increases our workload a lot. Next slide, you'll see a bit about the crime stats that we've seen over the years. As you can see, all the categories are down. So we're looking at 57% decrease from 2024 to 2025 at this time, as well as from 2021 to 2025, a decrease of 35%. That's for persons crimes, and then you'll see for property crimes, we're down 16%. Over the last couple of years. And then criminal code is down by 33%. So all in all, it's been a good year. So our current staffing here at the detachment, I'm going to go through this. So as you all know, we do run a hybrid system. So we have 3 rural positions and 21 town positions. The 3 rural positions are always filled, and that's with 1 corporal and 2 constables. The town positions of 21 consists of 1 staff sergeant, 1 sergeant, 4 corporals, and 15 constables. So currently, 15 spots are filled. So just going through those, we have the 2 positions that are frozen. We have 1 long-term leave, and we have 1 mat leave, and we have 2 vacant positions. We also have 2 more members on transfer out that have been given transfer papers, and 2 more that are releasable that can be transferred out. So minimum in Hinton, members have to serve 4 years at this post. On a good note, we have 1 member coming in from Slave Lake. She just purchased a house and should be here May 1st, and another member coming in from Morinville. So we are filling the positions. It's just a slow process. I'll let them know. So just a review of the 2024. So some of the reasons why we have decreased in certain areas. Obviously, staffing has been a challenge for us. The funding for extra traffic enforcement has gone down on the provincial side, as well as for a portion of time we were supplemented through the photo radar program, and so members weren't as used to writing tickets as they are needing right now. The new incentives that going forward into 2025, we're looking forward to, we have a new side-by-side coming, so we're going to be making patrols in the county using the side-by-side, as well as increased safety talks in regards to off-highway vehicles. So we're going to stick with the same goals this year, but change up the incentives a little bit. So we're looking to increase enforcement. We did create a program last year called Safe Roads Program in the county, where we would use funds to have members come in on their days off to do enforcement, as well as we asked groups such as RTU, which is the Roving Traffic Unit, to come out and write tickets in our area. And I believe they had a really nice drug investigation that ended up in the newspaper when they were here. Reducing theft, like GIS is a very productive unit. I think if we didn't have that unit, I think we would see crime stats completely different than what we have today. So they're conducting a number of drug investigations, and this is all done through intelligence-led policing. They've been working with the oil field companies. Oil field theft has really risen in the county, so they're working with the oil field companies to combat that. As well as we've come together on a number of occasions and had meetings with the oil field companies and figuring out how to work better with them. And we are continuing that relationship by putting out quarterly reports to them and with suggestions on how to keep their assets safer. Community engagements, moving forward, we're going to continue with our positive ticket program. There's pictures of the positive tickets. It's a really great program for the youth, where we would see somebody in the community doing something great, such as the youth group volunteers at the food bank, so I've been there to give out positive tickets. The youth then brings it up to the detachment and picks out a gift card from our bin of gift cards that was funded through Victim Services. And that's why we have 365 gift cards to give away. So it's just an example on each one of the members do carry. Lemonade stands is another good. We like seeing the entrepreneurs out there. So town halls, we like to do a town hall each year so that residents have their say. We did have one set up, but due to the internet connection, we had to postpone it, and we have yet to set up a new date. As well as I enjoy going out into the county, so I will have one down in the Cadman area once more people gather down there for the summer. So dates to be determined on both of those. So as of December 6th, 2025, all of your Hinton members do have body-worn cameras on. That is as part of the Alberta RCMP's ongoing commitment to transparency, accountability, and modernization of our force. So some of the times that we will be using are body-worn cameras. So when there's a crime in progress, a body disorder, or public disorder, interaction with people in crisis, to record information to support the performance of their duties, such as statements are being taken, surveillance is able to be sent to us through community partnerships, investigations, and mental health calls. So when possible, members are supposed to let the public know that they are being recorded. They do have a large light on them, so people should know when they're activated and that they're on, but policy and training does provide the guidance, and when possible, the members will advise when they are, but the screen does go red when they are being recorded, and it does beep out. So that is your 2024 report, 2025 report from the Hinton RCMP, subject to any questions you may have.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Committee, any comments or questions? Councilor Race?
Thank you very much, Chair. I do have one question on search warrants. And I don't know a lot about search warrants, but don't you need cause or reason to conduct that search? So how can you have a goal for something unknown like that?
So for search warrants, it's a quite a large umbrella. So we do search warrants for frauds, where we investigate the larger frauds. We'll do search warrants on people's bank accounts. We'll do trackers on cell phones. We'll do search warrants on homes, search warrants on. So by setting a goal, we're able to provide the training, and there's no shortage of work out there. I guess I'll say, if members are wanting the work, they can speak to people in the community and find out where the drug houses are, who's trafficking, who's bringing the drugs into town, and we're able to write search warrants to put onto people's cell phones and be able to track when they go different areas. It's all a very training is needed for that sort of thing. So if we find a member who's interested in investigating a fraud and we're able to write a search warrant for a bank account, you could write up to 6 warrants on 6 different bank accounts, but 1 file. So it's a goal so that we can provide the training and the skills needed for the members to be engaged.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Race. Councilor House?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, because the body cameras, that was part of the equipment, and it was on the budget. So that's been already dealt with. But what's next? Because there was some other equipment. I think firearms was one of them that was coming forward. But there was some other things. So what are we expecting to see in our future budgets for when it comes to that kind of equipment?
I do not recall what was all on that because it came through Operations Strategic Branch, but I do know that we are all equipped with our tasers. That was on there.
Right.
Our body-worn cameras belong to the detachment, so when somebody leaves here, we keep the cameras.
Yeah.
They don't leave the detachment. I can tell you we've been working towards getting a new pistol since I started.
Yeah.
So this is 19 years. So I'm not actually sure exactly what was on there, but as of this time, I do know that we recently received a 40 mil, which is a firearm that shoots rubber bullets.
Okay.
So that's something that we recently acquired. But I don't recall anything else that's coming out equipment-wise, unless it's like far down the road.
Right.
But we have received no information as to when the firearms would be changed over.
Okay, if I may, because that's what I recall, the bigger part of the budget, the bulk of it, would have been that. So, perfect. Just a other follow-up. So you have body cameras. Do the cruisers also have cameras too?
Yes, we have VICs on the vehicles, and I believe in time they'll probably be phasing out some of that.
Okay.
So we won't require that equipment, but I believe with the body-worn cameras, we're going to see courts clear up. We're going to see public complaints clear up very quickly because public complaints takes a lot of my time. So I really think it will be similar to if you watch the camera, it will be like you're at the call with me. Everything's audio recorded, and members are expected, if seatbelt's off, camera on. That's what they're supposed to be doing, unless they're doing a sensitive, such as going into the hospital, going into the schools, that sort of thing. They're not required to turn them on unless, if I were to press the button now, it would go back by 30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
So that way it captures if something is in them.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor House, Councilor Wu.
Yeah, just a question. I think things to celebrate that are really awesome for this year, like the number of assaults by volume. Number of assaults, like 13 this year compared to last year, 40. That's great. Thefts under $5,000. Last year, 48. This year, comparatively, 20. Those are really fantastic. The one that caught my eye that was interesting was mischief other. That's any comments on why that particular category is the hot one this year, where it's actually increased quite dramatically, like I think 64 calls this year compared to 39.
So, just an example, if you walk by my car and try the door handle, that's a mischief.
Okay.
And so it again, is a
So-
huge umbrella that incorporates a lot of different things. But if you break my window, that's a mischief too. So it's quite large, what it encompasses.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Councillor Goon, Councillor Haas, and Councillor Taylor.
On that note, I just wanted to confirm, the mapping is still happening when it comes to crime in our community, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's still accessible on
To
our
the public.
website? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we use it in the sense that we're able to see where our hotspots are. So if we get a large amount of calls, say, on the west end in the business area, then we know that we need to be doing proactive patrols in the evening at this time, because this is when our calls are being reported. And then we're able to hopefully decrease the crime that's happening during that time.
Thank you, Councillor Haas, Councillor Taylor.
One of the things I'm concerned about is that this is an annual report, and we've gone down 4 staff members. And there's no comparables or reference point for our town versus other towns. You remember back in 1922, there were 2 general types of comparables. I'm not talking about the 98-page report, but I'm talking about there were the K Division community policing standards, and then there were the comparison to other towns. So I'm not saying we need that kind of information on an annual, on a monthly basis, but how can I be assured that if we don't have that information, that we're safe, that we really have a safe community, in light of the fact that we're down 4 staff officers?
What I can tell you is that every town is very different. I can look at where the calls that are coming into Edson, but in order to put that together into a report, I would have to request it. But I believe, even if we look at a town that has a similar amount of members, a similar amount of residents, depending on what's within that town, we are going to be different. If I compare our town to Drayton Valley, Edson, and Hinton, they're going to be very different in regards to the type of crime that's happening. Where Drayton Valley has the oil field, Edson does have a large amount of transit people there. Our town is going to be very different than they are, as well as the members within. My members are very proactive, when we see something to go after, we go after it. And I really feel like the types of members that I have in the detachment and my general investigation section is the reason why all these numbers are down, because you can have the exact same type of town but different types of members in there, and you may not have the same results.
That's why, follow-up? That's why you don't just use one comparable town, you use a variety of comparable similar towns. Isn't having some sort of reference point or comparison, doesn't that give you some useful information? Like when we got that report back then, that said quite a bit about the policing in the town of Hinton, to me, so I thought it was quite useful. So we don't have any reference point.
Okay, I believe your question has been responded to. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Haas, and then Councillor Magoon.
I guess along those lines, to clarify too, because you mentioned the GIS unit is a fairly significant reason for our crime being down. Not every community has same divisions, right, within the organization, because some are very heavy traffic, we are not, whereas some are more GIS and other, so that would be another challenging part to compare to as well, would it not be?
Yes, and an example would be Edson does have a GI section, but due to their members on the front line, they had to use those members to add to their front line. So therefore, there's not such a structure of GIS. And just for context, I do have 3 members in my GI section. One is in frozen position. So I have a corporal and I have a constable. So they are the driving force behind motivating other members. They help with drug investigations in Edson, Jasper, because we all deal with the same people. So it's all intelligence that's gathered from around the area. I just don't, It would be hard. And going back to Stuart's question, I could gather that information through OSB if that's something that council would like. I'm not sure what we would gain from getting that information other than merely just comparing the communities, but I really think you're comparing apples to oranges. It's not the same type of community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huss. Councillor Good.
Yeah, my final comment, I just want to wrap up by saying that thanks for the hard work. I think if we look at 24 to 25's overall categories and how they're down, it's amazing. Like 57% down total persons, 16% down total property, total down 31%, and that's a thing to celebrate. So thanks for the hard work, you for your leadership and the members on, their part, whether it's GI, General Investigative Services or regular membership on the streets. It's appreciated and it's valued by the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Good. Councillor Taylor.
I think that information is valuable. Last time we used it to make resourcing decisions, and it also might help us make advocacy decisions if we know where we sit, if we want to have a complete picture on where we sit with our policing. Therefore, I'd like to seek consensus to have the administration include the following information in this year's annual RCMP report. The RCMP divisional standards and a comparison of basic policing metrics with surrounding towns.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. You'll probably have to repeat that much slower so that it can be captured. Just give Ms. Davy Campbell a second to get ready. Okay, if you wanted to repeat that, Councillor Taylor.
The committee seek consensus to have admin include the following information. Into this year's annual RCMP report. RCMP divisional standards. And a comparison of basic policing metrics to surrounding towns.
And sorry, the comparison.
RCMP divisional standards and, let me get back to where we find it. Comparison of basic policing metrics to surrounding towns.
Sorry.
Comparison of basic policing metrics to surrounding towns. I'd just like to give a few examples of what I'm talking about, if that's all right. The divisional standards would be things like, the weighted workload hours, what is the proactive availability and attachment, travel and response time. And the metrics would be things like, I can't find them, the crime index, criminal case per member, criminal code per 1,000 population, police files per member. Those would be comparison to surrounding towns. So we've used that in the past, and it's provided, at least to me, a good comparison to surrounding towns. Not perfect, but when you compare a number of comparable towns, it's provided a picture of where we sit from a safe point of view. And I just want this town to understand where we sit from a safety point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. So committee, we do have consensus requests on the table. Councillor Goon and then Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess then I'll have a couple of questions overall. My assumption, and please correct it if I'm wrong, my assumption is that the crime stats presented on page 13 of 33 of the report would be relatively easy to produce then for comparable communities. However, some of the other areas that Councillor Taylor identified, I'd need an understanding of sort of what the level of workload would include in producing that. Crime stats I could generally see being something that would be useful for me. Now that being said, a related question that's going to impact on how I support this or not for administration is currently we have 2 positions frozen. So if the results were returned to council and we as a council saw that there was a benefit to unfreeze those positions, what would be the process for seeing that decision returned to us, if that was possible?
Through the chair to Councilor Magoon, that would just simply be a motion for committee or council to direct administration to bring that conversation back to the table.
May I speak to it then, Mr. Chair? Yeah, I'm supportive of seeing the crime statistics for other communities, but I'll be very clear, I'm certainly not interested in decreasing any positions moving forward. If anything, I would want to see us unfreeze positions to ensure that even though it's a difficulty filling those positions, I would rather have those positions open as an option if we were able to fill them in order to provide additional safety to our community. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Councilor Haas?
Thank you. I guess what this consensus is seeking brings me back to another discussion we had on the FCSS programming. And I remember the contractor saying that it's comparing apples to staplers. Very difficult. And that's what I'm hearing, the same kind of words with this as well, that I don't see how this is necessarily going to benefit our detachment going forward making decisions. I mean, anyone can look up the stats for the crimes and everything, and I agree with Councilor McGoon, that's a fairly easy thing in different communities, but to go as far as, because I don't also think that this necessarily captures, I'm not sure when Staff Sergeant heard this motion that it included caseloads, it includes all those things that were mentioned as additional, what we want to have that information. I'd be really curious on, stats may be quite easy to get. The rest of that may not be as simple as it sounds, and I agree that the load that would put on staff. For what purpose, I'm not entirely sure. My concern, or my major thing is the stats that we get are based on this community. We're seeing a decrease, we're seeing the proactiveness. Those are all the things that for me is important. And it also is, important, and I agree with Councilor Magoon, the amount of staff, that would be something that I would fully support to have that conversation. But what Edson's doing, Drayton Valley's doing, all those things, I just don't see it necessary. We had an opportunity to have a liaison with other police forces and other communities that we all agreed was unnecessary. We've got a good team here, we've got great liaisoning here, so we're not interested in partnering or getting other information on that though. So I'm not sure why would be getting this information and what the purpose would serve. So I'm not going to be supporting this at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Haas. Councilor Taylor?
Doesn't USCP use some or most of the information I talked about on a regular basis to assign resources provincially?
Eventually,
So,
meaning the 3 positions that we have at the detachment.
meaning if you have to make a choice between where you're going to send, you've got RCMP members coming out of the academy, you have to make a choice, are you going to send them to a busy detachment or a detachment that's not busy? K Division has an analysis section, they generate this information, it's push button stuff, and then they make a decision based on these metrics.
So OSB has confirmed that the reason why we have 3 provincial members is due to our call volume in the rural side. So it has to do with call volume as to why we have only 3 members. And to run the detachment non-hybrid, so separate our contract from our provincial assets, nearly impossible to run the provincial side with 3 members. They're running by themselves, basically. So, no, I would not say that they use this information to push the members out to those certain areas. Am I answering your question?
No, not really. He just said that this information is really hard to get. I'm not talking about this information, I'm talking about the summarized information from the report in 2022 that's generally summarized. I would assume that the RCMP used that information and that it's readily available in order to make resourcing decisions from one area to the next. I'm not even talking about the 3 staff members here. So they have to use something, and that's got to be the basis, or something similar to that's the basis that we're looking at. And I think that's important information for council to know, to have a safe committee. He obviously disagrees.
That would be a question for our OSB branch, which is out of K-Vision, who created that report.
So so you can't say how easy it is to get.
No, I have access to what you see in front of you that gets sent to me. I assume that gets sent to every detachment, but I don't have access to that other stuff. They would have to come up with that report.
Right. Because I kind of agree, like if we're talking something that's going to take like days to generate, fine, it's probably not worth it. But if we're talking about something that you send an email and you get a request, and then it comes and it's relatively easy to gather, that's my assumption, and that's what I think this is.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Haas?
Yeah, that's an assumption. And that's exactly, and I'm not going to, again, support something on an assumption, because now we're tasking them and say, go away, we want this report. And then they'll come back and say, well, your assumption is not correct, it's hard to get, then what do? We don't know. And the fact that our staff sergeant doesn't get that information tells me something else, that it's not even information that she's privy to, or that the staff sergeant is privy to. So I don't see how that is going to help us in our community. Our objective is to work in liaison with our staff sergeant and our policing committee to set these goals. And we've set those goals based on what our staff sergeant and team say are the major things in our community that we need to focus on. So again, I'm not going to support this, because also I don't think that this consensus includes any of those things that were said after the consensus. They're not included in this. And I looked at staff sergeant and said, would they assume from this motion that it would mean those things? And I believe she shook her head, because that's not captured in this. So I think we're going down a rabbit hole that really I don't feel comfortable sending our staff away from without more information on that, and I really don't think it's necessary. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Magoon?
It's just a question for Councillor Taylor. Councillor Taylor, given the information shared by the staff sergeant, would you accept a friendly, would you consider an amendment friendly that replaced everything after the comma with simply crime statistics from surrounding towns?
Well, I'd also like policing statistics. But I mean, if it's not going to pass, crime statistics is a good start, I guess. That's only a small part of the picture.
Mr. Chair, could I take into that a little bit?
Go ahead.
What would be the primary difference in information for you between the crime statistics and the policing statistics that I'm not understanding?
Crime statistics might be something like criminal caseload per officer. Policing statistics might be that things like, let me find it here, trial response time, proactive availability, how much of your time is available. Last time we got that report, it shows that our proactive availability was very large in comparison to the number of surrounding towns. Criminal caseload per population, police files per member, and how we sit with surrounding towns. Again, if it's a difficult thing to get, fine, let's forget it. But to me, it's part of having a complete policing picture at least once per year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Just before I go to Councilor Race, what was the date? Do you know the date that that report was presented with the information that you alluded to?
I believe it was late 2022, or 2022.
I ask because it's hard for, I think, anybody around the table to be able to consider a response to your consensus request without being able to see what was in that previous report and if it meshes with what you're asking for this time.
That's why I gave the specific examples. Here, those come from the tables in the 2022 report. That's why I listed those off
Okay.
specifically.
You don't know the specific date that report was before committee?
I believe it was 22.
Sorry?
It would have been 2022.
Yeah, but when, I'm trying to look at it and I can't find it easily. I want to look at it quickly, but that's okay. Councilor Race?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Staff Sergeant, I hope this is a good question to you. If our stats were going through the roof in a negative direction, would you reach out to your counterparts, see what they're going through and what they're doing to fix it, and then bring that information to us?
Absolutely. I believe stats, and anybody that's taken a few stats class know that stats, if you have a large change in stats where, so you can see 1,400 calls were self-generated, which means that our proactivity, our call volume's way down, way further than even what we're reporting here because we're actually the ones generating. And when I say self-generated, I pull over a car and I arrest somebody for impaired driving. I've just generated a call. So by having members out in a period of 12 months generate 1,400 calls is amazing. And I don't think we would see that in other communities because my members, they're not in the office, they're out on the road. And I would say I do get the daily occurrence reports, which means every shift I get a call, I get a sheet that tells me the calls, and every day there's general member generated calls on that. But in saying that, if I did see, and I review each one of the files, if I did see a trend, we've reached out to WAD crew who have come in to help us with our oil field issue. We've had the drug unit down here helping us with search warrants. We've had WAD GI and WAD crew both come down here. We've had RPAS, which is our drone operators. We've had them out in the area in regards to copper wire burning. We do reach out to quite a few of the RCMP units and ask them for assistance. We've even had them here doing surveillance. So we're definitely seeing it, but I would not necessarily use these stats to guide where I need to use my resources. I would look at my call volume and say, where can we have these go-getter members, where can we put them? And they'll find what they're looking for.
Chair, just one thing. When I take issue with something, I ask for comparables. I want to know what other communities are doing. I don't take issue with what I'm seeing today, so I will be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Race. Councilor Magoon?
I just wanted to try to understand something that you had mentioned with self-generated calls versus, if I as a citizen call in. So just tease it out a little bit more. So if our call volume is down, but we have a much more active staff who are generating their own calls, does that mean that the calls generated by the community are actually significantly down?
Significant.
Okay. And that's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure that I understood that. I guess just trying to step back for a sec, and I can only speak to the crime stats because it's simple. I can look at the numbers and understand what's going on in the other communities. I'm not so interested in a lot of the metrics, but the crime stats I could see being of value. And I guess my question for you is, if by will of council, we got crime stats, and by crime stats I mean what you've provided that is labeled crime stats for, say, Jasper, Edson, Whitecourt, Drayton Valley, and we saw that over the last several years in some of these targeted communities that a number of their stats were up, and there's no casting judgment, there's just understanding what's happening in those particular areas. Meanwhile, ours were going, say, down. And we said, well, geez, perhaps there's a trend in the region that crime is potentially going up. we want to guard our community against crime creep, I guess would be, a layperson's way of saying, that might be important for us as a community. We want to make sure that we activate those 2 frozen members. Is that something you would consider if the region as a whole was saying they had a different trend than what we were experiencing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I guess in that. The problem I have is that I have empty positions.
Yeah.
And I need to fill those positions. That is my responsibility to the town of Hinton. And when we go back to that staffing list, so anybody that's long-term, we say ODS on, that means Hinton does not pay for that member. When they're on mat or pat leave, Hinton does not pay for that member. So although those members are in those positions, Hinton does not pay for them. The provincial side always pays 3 positions, whether I have somebody in those positions or not. So anytime that position, we have 1 member transferring out that's in the provincial side, I will take somebody from the town and move them into a provincial spot, so that we are able to monitor a bit more of the contract side of leasing, because provincially they pay for that position, so you might as well put somebody in there. So in saying that, in a perfect world, I would love for those positions to be unfroze. I think we would see even a better number on our crime. Traffic, I think, is invaluable. I think it's very hard to measure the impact that a traffic member has on this detachment area, because that's why I bring in RTU, I bring in the traffic unit from Edson. But I would love to have somebody in town that's able to do the roads. We no longer have photo enforcement, so we don't have that enforcement anymore. And to have somebody in town, we have sheriffs on the highway, we don't need any more, we need people in town.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to see consensus that, sorry, General, I'll be slow.
Is this an amendment, Councilor McGowan?
Yeah. Seek consensus to amend. And then, Jen, it would be everything after the comma to be replaced with crime statistics for surrounding communities. And if I can speak to that, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
And with the understanding that in the report presented on page 13, it identifies a chart that says it is labeled crime statistics. For myself, because based on what the staff sergeant has said, that potentially could impact, I think, a resourcing decision from council. I would be willing to support that, again, for the purposes of unfreezing positions. But for myself, nothing else. Certainly not to withdraw any resources as it currently stands, simply to give our RCMP more tools, at least to try and fill positions. So unless I've misunderstood something. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councilor McGowan. So committee, we do have a proposed amendment to the consensus request, so if we could speak to that alone. Councilor House?
Yeah, I'll support this. The stats, every detachment gives these to their council. These are, it can give us a picture of that. And I agree. To compare, and it is what our staff sergeant does already, looks at it and it gives us a picture of what's happening in our surrounding areas. And then we can also be proactive, as you said, is if there is an increase of some risk of crime in other areas. We all know, and I know that the RCMP, but we try to push it to another community. So, other communities are pushing it our way, then we're prepared and can see that. So I'm fully in support of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor House. Committee, anyone else would like to speak to the proposed amendment? Councilor Taylor?
Yeah, I support that. I think that's a good start. Yeah, it's not totally what I was asking for, but I can see that ship is getting some. My only question to you would be, do you mean surrounding communities or surrounding and comparable communities? Because there's communities that are surrounding and aren't comparable. We don't want to compare to communities that aren't comparable. Is that correct?
May I, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that would be a reasonable, friendly sort of change to the wording.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor House? Ernest, and then Councillor Hoss.
Making it through the chair to probably the mover, would it be possible for you to just read what the intended direction would be if the motion, the amendment were to pass?
Absolutely. Thank you. Sorry, Jen, do you mind? Yeah, there we go. That committee seek consensus to have administration include the following information into this year's annual RCMP report. Crime statistics for surrounding and comparable communities.
Thank you, that clears it up.
Anything further, Ernest? That's it. Councillor Hoss?
I didn't have an issue with it until we did the comparables, because I guess my only concern is surrounding, and maybe Staff Sergeant Friggman can correct me, but if we're looking at comparables, say, of community size, but it's 500 kilometers away, criminals don't necessarily go from a long distance, they kind of shift from town to town. And I guess surrounding area is what I personally would like to see, because that is our more likely hurdle. But I'm not concerned about other communities that are comparable in size in Alberta, personally, because I don't think those necessarily are going to affect our crime statistics potentially. Is that, am I off base there, or that's how I consider it? Because I mean, administration sometimes brings us reports back to comparable communities that are of the same size to show, but this to me is different. To me, first of all, it's surrounding, not comparable. But can you comment on that?
As I've said before when I was mentioning to Stuart, every town is very different.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Grand Park for 10 years, very, very different place than living here. But comparing here to Jasper, extremely different. But comparing us to Drayton Valley, completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Drayton Valley has an oil field and is close to the city. We can compare, but it's going to be very different. So surrounding communities or comparable communities, all are going to be very different.
So the word surrounding and comparable isn't going to really change anything?
If information is wanted based on the population, I can gather that. If information is wanted in regards to surroundings such as Jasper, Edson, Grand Cache, Evansburg, Drayton Valley, I can get that, depending on what council wants.
Okay, thank you.
Just before I go to Councillor Magoon, I know it might sound like semantics, but it's really not. Because having and in there or not having and in there makes it different. If the and is removed, it's surrounding comparable communities, which means both. It means comparable communities that are surrounding Hinton. If you put the and in there, to Councillor Haas's concern, that's surrounding communities and also comparable communities that may not be near Hinton. So I look to Councillor Magoon, because I don't think in the amendment he actually included the word and. I think what he said was surrounding comparable. So can you clarify that, Councillor Magoon?
Yeah, I sorry if I may, because I don't want to overtax the staff sergeant and administration with gathering information for myself, it would be surrounding comparable communities, because I think it limits the scope a little bit. I think, yeah, you're absolutely right, and I don't think that's, I think that's important, and starts to expand that radius outwards further and further, and that's not what I'm looking for.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Councillor Magoon. CEO Panasic, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Chair. I think we cleared it out, but I was just going to recommend that if there was some confusion on that one, that we could just set comparable communities within a 250 kilometer radius, and that just gives us a little bit more clarity. That would incorporate Drayton Valley, Whitecourt, Edson, Jasper, those types of communities. But I think this is clear enough that with this amendment.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Magoon, I did have you in Q2. Did you
No,
want to speak to it?
that actually deals with it quite well, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rice?
Thank you, sir. Just a quick question. Someone just clarify to me, why do we need these stats from other communities? Is it to make us feel good that our CFP are doing such a good job and our stats are low, and we can say, look what's happening in Hinton. So what is the end goal here in getting those stats?
Okay, thank you, Councilor Ray. I'm assuming that was to committee. I'd speak to it and then I'd Councilor Magoon. I feel that there would be some value in that, in being able to look at other communities and see what their, what types of crime they're experiencing and what types of crimes are being reported and committed. It gives some peace of mind, some comfort to the citizens of Hinton that we are in a good spot. If you just look at things anecdotally, and they're talking to their neighbor, and their neighbor says, "Oh, crime's running rampant in Hinton. It's crazy. My garage got broken into." They might think it's, it is running rampant, but the reality might not be. That one individual's circumstance might be an extenuating circumstance. So having other communities with amalgamated aggregate numbers that you can compare to, I think it does have some value. Councilor Magoon?
No, I think you said it quite well. Thank you.
Mayor Nissen?
Thank you, through the chair, to this committee and probably our staff sergeant. To committee first. This amendment, would the intent of this amendment be for the staff sergeant to include the crime statistics table page for multiple other communities, and that is it? Nothing additional to the report other than this page for some other communities? That is the intent of the amendment?
In short, yes.
And through the chair to the staff sergeant, this information is readily available to you, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so adding this into the annual report that comes back after the quarter is complete and your fiscal year is over is not a significant burden of effort?
It is not.
Okay, so with that, I will be supporting this amendment as it is, and I'll speak to the other part when we see what happens here.
Mayor Nissen, committee? Okay, nothing further from committee. We will vote on the amendment. The amendment was to remove RCMP divisional standards in comparison of basic policing metrics to surrounding towns and replace it with crime statistics for surrounding comparable communities. Last chance for any comments or questions. Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment? And that is carried unanimously. So the amendment's passed, so our consensus request is now changed. So the consensus request is now, the committee seek consensus to have administration include. It's okay. The committee seek consensus to have administration include following information into this year's annual RCMP report, crime statistics for surrounding comparable communities. Okay, committee, I would like to speak to the amended motion. Consensus request, sorry. Councilor House?
Yeah, with this, I'll be in favor of this, and I think there is some good information, because I agree with Councilor Stashik's previous words that sometimes the idea that Hinton is high in crime, is based on anecdotal rumors, things that happen, but when you're having those comparables to other communities can be, can help our citizens feel safer when it comes to this, and it also will help us moving forward that if we are seeing some issues, like Councilor Magoon said earlier about those roles and positions, to set us up well to address those. And, in fact, even just hearing Staff Sergeant Tergameni's comments this evening, maybe something that we as a council should be looking at sooner rather than later, because this is the type of thing that if you lose control, it's hard to gain it back, and we have a hard enough time from our Staff Sergeant's comments filling the positions we have, but having more opportunity, to fill positions have a higher number is always, I think, a good practice when it comes to this thing. But for that aside, I'll be supporting this for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Mayor Nissen?
And thank you through the chair to committee. I'll be supporting the amended motion as well. I was originally concerned that we were asking administration for information that they could not possibly provide and work that would take a significant amount of time, but this amended motion and the staff sergeant's statements that these sheets are readily available to them, to include them in our annual report doesn't seem to be a big burden on administration from my perspective, so I'll be in support of this at this time. And I want to thank committee for working through this consensus to find something that really does make sense. Thank you.
Mayor Nissen? Committee? All right, if there's nothing further, we will call the question. The committee seek consensus to have administration include the following information into this year's annual RCMP report, crime statistics for surrounding comparable communities. If there's no other comments or questions, we'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Race, I didn't get a vote.
I voted on mine.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see that. So I think maybe we should either all vote by hand or all vote online.
I'm sorry?
I think maybe we should just create a consensus here that we all either vote by hand or all vote online. I can't see the online votes, and there would have only been one. What does committee prefer? Councillor Haas, Councillor Magoon?
By hand, because we already been set up, so by hand.
Councillor Magoon? By hand. Councillor Race?
I voted in favor.
Councillor Taylor?
I'm happy to do either. You will need to give me 10, 15 minutes to set my computer up.
So I think we've been doing hand voting up until now. I think we'll just continue with hand voting, if that's okay with everyone on committee. Okay, so we will call the question again then. Does committee need the consensus request read again, or? Okay, we'll just call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Okay. Thank you, committee, for working through that. I'll get back to that, sorry. Okay, anything further? Amanda?
Nothing further.
Okay, Councilor Taylor?
No more questions?
Yep, that's fine.
No more motions, though. Do you have any more information on the details regarding the bylaw officer new reporting relationships? Is there any procedural stuff and how that's going to work?
I have not received any further information from my management. I have been working with Heather and Jordan to try and figure out what the province's expectations are. It's slightly unclear to us what their expectations are.
Yeah, okay, it's too early.
Committee? Councilor Taylor?
Can you give an update to us on transient camps and their status?
I do not have that information readily available as to, you're looking for the amount of camps that we've been attending.
Or just a general impression of whether it's, there's still some out there, just a general summary, really.
We are receiving very few calls for service in regards to camps. We are encouraging people to call us. We also have partnered with HELP, and we attend these camps with HELP, or if they're not available, we attend and provide the name to HELP so that they can reach out to these people and try and get them the services that they need so that they're no longer living in tents on our land. But we're also working with bylaw so that they're able to attend the camps after we've received the call. So really it's a really big partnership, as well as the MAP program. If we do see people that are in need, we do bring them down to the MAP program, and I've been checking in with HELP, and they said that there has been on average 3 to 4 people there per night. But we are not receiving the same amount of calls that we were receiving them last year in regards to the camps.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Committee, any further? All right, if there's nothing else from the committee, thank you very much for attending and presenting today. So this was informative, and we appreciate having you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. That brings us to reports from administration, 5.1.